right, welcome. uh, let's close all this. So a few minutes ago, I fell outside by accident and cracked my phone screen, so it might be hard to read some stuff. So we have a lot of updates to talk about. As you've all probably know by now, the world is going towards a second global lockdown. Europe is currently at the forefront of that. Everybody else is falling behind. So look at the current numbers for SARS-2. We have 40 million total cases. Again, severely underreported. We're having a lot of antibody tests coming out that are showing that this number is very puny compared to the actual number. Deaths also severely underreported. I've already mentioned it many times before about excess deaths and just the cover up overall. The cover up now recovered. It doesn't mean anything at all because we have too many long haulers. If you recall, in England, they opened up a hospital where I think in England alone, they had 60,000 people going to this new hospital that treats long haulers. So these long haulers are considered recovered. So out of these 30 million, I would like to know how many are long haulers. And of course, this number itself is doesn't mean anything at all. You know, it's a garbage number. These are all garbage numbers. All right. Daily cases looks about right. What I was saying. Now the deaths are going up again. It's a strange graph, really. For today's numbers, what's new? Oh yeah, Belgium's still getting hit hard. Yeah, Belgium's one of the new ones getting hit hard. Kazakhstan is still not reporting deaths. China, of course, lying as always. Thailand has some. New Zealand is still getting some. So for today, we had today's Monday. So today is another one of those days we get low numbers because there's not much testing going on Sunday. So tomorrow we're gonna see some big ones for the week. Everybody's expecting record numbers for the week coming up, for this week coming up, based upon how bad the weekend was. If you were keeping up with things on the weekend, there were records getting hit all over the world in terms of deaths, cases. So this is gonna be a brutal week. I would say that November is gonna be a brutal month when it comes to the virus, based upon everything that's happening. So today we have 337,000 new cases. USA first place, 57,000. India second, 46,000. UK third, 18,000. Russia fourth, 15,000. So Russia's moving back up again. Obviously they're lying, as is pretty much everybody. Brazil isn't even up here no more. But we do have some new ones that are kind of moving back up, like France has 13,000 today. Argentina, 12,000. I think Argentina is now, yeah, they have 1,002,000. They are the fifth country with the most cases officially. That was breaking news today, earlier. Italy, Italy and Spain, and of course they'd be together. If you recall back then, Italy and Spain were the really, really bad wave ones. And now look, Spain, 12,000 new cases, 73 deaths. Italy, 9,000 new cases, 73 deaths. Okay, that's the same number, whatever. Yeah, these two countries that supposedly beat the virus and got better, they're getting strongholded once again by another wave. Belgium is doing really bad. I think we'll get to Belgium later. Switzerland too, actually, but I haven't heard much mention of them. And it just goes on and on. All these countries that you're seeing right here, Ukraine, Iran, Colombia, Germany, Poland, a lot of them are getting hit hard, going back into lockdown, or they survived the first wave, but now they're getting hit hard now for the first time. Yeah, so I mean, before, if you follow my videos, I'll just focus on the first four. But now it's like I gotta go all the way down to like the late 20s, because there's so many countries just new cases, so many other countries going back to second lockdown. It's a horrible situation. In terms of deaths, India is first with 600. Argentina is second with 449. Yeah, Argentina is accelerating very, very fast. USA is third, 442. And Iran is fourth with 337. I think that's, yeah, we'll get to Iran. Brazil still at fifth place. And Russia, France had a spike in this. I mean, we'll get to that too. I mean, I would like to read this entire thing if I could. It's just, I mean, back then when we were going through the first wave globally, it was like, okay, we had like, what, four countries that I talk about, and now it's like there's so many I want to talk about. It's gotten so bad, it's disastrous. So we're gonna keep it with the latest news starting from October 10th up until today. There is a lot to cover. You're gonna have to bear with me. This is gonna be a very long video, so just bear with me and just we'll see together how bad things really are. So starting off with October 10th, North Korea continues to insist that it remains free of SARS-2 of the SARS-2 pandemic, even as lockdown measures persist around the country. If you remember, they were asking other countries for help months ago. So I mean, obviously they're lying, but you know how that country is. They're like the CCP, where they just kind of create their own reality and present it to the world. Dictator Kim Jong-un renewed the claim Saturday during a military parade that aimed to bolster internal unity following a tumultuous year that saw border closures to stem the pandemic spread and devastating summer floods and typhoons that have exacerbated chronic food shortages. Increased lockdown measures in late July raised speculation that the nation had suspected cases, but even after reporting a possible first SARS-2 patient, North Korean officials insisted that the test was inconclusive. How convenient. Pennsylvania sees biggest SARS-2 increase since April as northeastern spike worsens. Most northeastern states have had new case counts increase over the past few weeks, in the largest sustained SARS-2 spread there since the spring. The increase is being followed by a rise in hospitalizations as well, reversing trends of declines that have been in place for months. And deaths, which lag behind increases in cases and hospitalizations, have not significantly spiked, but there have been increases this month in New York and Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania did kind of go up, but they have gone down now, which is a good thing. Dr. Deborah Birx of the White House Coronavirus Task Force warned Americans recently that there is a very different coronavirus spread going on right now. Now, that is a very interesting thing to say because I think there's a lot to unpack there. Now, those of you who are familiar with Dr. Li Manyang, she did say that, and by the way, she's a virologist from China that defected and has been trying to expose the CCP's virus. So she said that China made the virus in the lab, and again, we talked about that 1,000 times. I mean, logically speaking, it's from a lab. There's too much evidence to show that is the likely case. Anyhow, she said that the CCP or the PLA when they make viruses, they make several strains. So they've made several different versions of this virus. Now, Birx is saying that there's a very different coronavirus spread going on right now. So what could she mean by that? I mean, if you try to look between the lines and take that into context, I would say just come up with your own conclusion. UK. The city of Bangor has gone into local lockdown from 800 BST on Saturday. It means that 16,000 people there cannot go in or out of the area without good reasons, such as work or study. Bangor's restriction will affect 8 wards in the city: Gars, Harel, Menai, De Niol, Marchog, I'm probably saying this really, really badly. Glider, Hendra, and Dewi. The city has seen a significant cluster of SARS-2 cases, and the incident rate stands at about 400 cases per 100,000 people. It becomes the second area to face a local lockdown, while the rest of its county does not, following Llanelli in Carmarthenshire. Yeah, when it comes to the UK, their Boris Johnson is very resistant to lock back down again. And so we're seeing local lockdowns because, the UK is trying to save face. Discussions were held earlier, but it was decided not to extend restrictions to anywhere else in Gwynedd. White House blocks CDC from requiring masks on public transportation. The order would have mandated that both passengers and employees wear face coverings on planes, trains, buses, and subways, and in airports, stations, and depots. You would think something so obvious would have passed, but it didn't. SARS-2, Berlin's first curfew in 70 years, kicks in. The German capital has implemented a nighttime curfew in response to a dramatic increase in SARS-2 cases. On the first night of the new regulations, the mood was somber in the Friedrichshain district, a virus hotspot. SARS-2 infected Trump. Oh yeah, that was a. I mean, there was a lot to say there, but anyhow, SARS-2 infected Trump holds first in-person event at the White House since hospitalization. President Donald Trump left the hospital just 5 days prior and has yet to publicly reveal when he last tested negative. 9 people who attended President Donald Trump's September 18 rally in Bemidji, Minnesota, have contracted SARS-2, according to state health officials. Of those 9, 2 have been hospitalized, with 1 currently in an ICU unit. I wonder how they're doing. This was a while back. Minnesota Department of Health spokesperson Erin McHenry told Insider in an email that while the department can't confirm that the infections were contracted at the rally, the event appears a likely driver of increase in SARS-2 cases. A SARS-2 vaccine could kill 500,000 sharks, conservationists warn. A conservation group is warning that the development of an effective coronavirus vaccine on a global scale could ravage shark populations worldwide, as researchers race to produce a vaccine using an oil derived from sharks. Squalene, a compound that is harvested from the livers of sharks, is a common moisturizing ingredient in cosmetics. It's also used in malaria and flu vaccines as an agent that boosts the immune system's response. Shark Allies, a nonprofit that advocates for the protection of sharks, projects that some 500,000 sharks could be killed if a SARS-2 vaccine with shark squalene proves to be effective. Already, an estimated 2.7 million sharks are killed annually for their squalene to make cosmetics, according to the group. Interesting. Fresh SARS-2 cases set new 24-hour record with nearly 25.7. French SARS-2 cases set new 24-hour record with nearly 27,000 infections. So yeah, France, the past couple of days, has broken a lot of records, surprisingly on a weekend. So it's out of control there. Former New Jersey government Chris Christie has been released from a hospital after becoming infected with SARS-2. I don't know if I posted it later on, but he was in ICU for like a week. SARS-2 Florida. No daily case update on Saturday from DOH. Florida again with they're still covering up. After 7 months of issuing daily reports on the SARS-2 case in Florida, health officials say bad data from a lab blocks released Saturday. Europe records 100,000 daily SARS-2 cases for first time. Cases throughout Europe have been steadily rising over the past week, even as new infections in worst affected countries such as India and Brazil have shown signs of slowing down. Yeah, they have. India and Brazil have been slowing down, but the real question is, what's gonna happen when they get hit by wave 2? Because if we were to put it bluntly, everybody's gonna get hit by wave 2, every single country, and based upon how bad Europe is wave 2 is right now, I can't even imagine what India and Brazil are gonna be like if they get hit by a wave 2, which is kind of like what is worrying a lot of people, because the first wave was brutal for India and Brazil. So what's the second way going to be like? The epicenter of the outbreak in the European region has moved to the United Kingdom, Russia, Spain, and France, which have reported at least over 10,000 cases each in the last 3 days. Britain has been reeling under a double whammy of SARS-2 cases skyrocketing and an alarming case to fatality rate of 7%, among the highest in the world. Wow, that's more than six of every 10,000 people have died due to the virus in the country. Italy, in the southern region of Europe, recorded over 4,000 cases for the first time since April, when the country was slammed by the virus. The daily number of cases in the country has been consistently rising for 3 months. Spain's government invoked a state of emergency on Friday to impose a partial lockdown on Madrid, with 850 SARS-2 infections per 100,000 people. The Madrid area has Europe's highest infection rate. One of Michigan's popular casinos has been named a possible SARS-2 exposure site by health officials. Anyone who visited Little River Casino Resort in Manistee between October 2 to 4 is asked to self-monitor for SARS-2 symptoms for 14 days from the possible exposure date, according to a news release issued by the District Health Department, number 10, which covers 10 northern Michigan counties, including Manistee. Protests for Netanyahu's resignation continue despite SARS-2 restrictions. Anti-government protests remain rampant on the streets of Israel for the 15th week in a row, as thousands of protesters rallied in Jerusalem, the capital city, to demand the resignation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Similarly, smaller protests were reported in Tel Aviv and Caesarea. And organizers of the protest released the figure that approximately 16,000 demonstrators joined nationwide. The driving cause of the protest is Netanyahu's handling of the SARS-2 crisis and the allegations of corruption, which he denies. Now, Israel has gotten hit very hard, but I think right now they're kind of winding down and trying to ease restrictions. The world crosses an ominous milestone, recording more than 1 million new cases in 3 days. Nancy Pelosi merely panned the White House's $1.8 trillion relief offer, but Republicans revolted against it. It is disappearing, President Trump said of the virus, addressing supporters from a White House balcony. Inside and outside the CDC, pressure is building on its director, Robert Redfield, to stand up to Trump. In a new campaign ad, Trump's own SARS-2 infection takes center stage. In the suburban Orthodox Jewish community, there are many positive tests, but few masks. So about the CDC, I mean, not even them, the WHO. I don't think I posted it on here, but the WHO said recently that lockdowns were not advised as the best way to counter the virus. But we have known for a very long time that the WHO is a joke, and they collaborate with the Chinese Communist Party to lie to the world about the virus. And so Tedros and all of them should be held responsible and criminally charged. He became a hero. Bolsonaro sees popularity surge as SARS-2 spreads. Brazil's hard-right president, Jair Bolsonaro, dismissed SARS-2 as a little flu and said it should be faced like a man, not a boy. He sneered that self-isolation was for the weak and raged against lockdown measures. He clashed with state governors, and his own former health minister savaged his handling of the pandemic. I mean, this man's worse than Trump. He's worse than Trump. Hospitals in north of England fear worst as SARS-2 admissions rise rapidly. Liverpool may run out of beds in a week as cases double again and medical staff are worried and worn out. NHS doctors sometimes talk of the first wave of the pandemic as a tsunami. The sea recedes, everything goes quiet, then it hits. I think we're starting to see that again, said Dr. Matthew Tuck, who works in Newcastle as an anesthetic registrar in the deputy chair of the BMA's Junior Doctors Committee. Where we are now is very similar to how we all felt in the middle of March. Hospitals across the north of England are preparing for the worst. Last week saw an influx of SARS-2 patients that has rattled medics and ministers. On Thursday, MPs were told that the number of patients in ICU care in the north of England in 3 weeks' time would be higher than at the height of the first wave of the pandemic in April. So they said 3 weeks. I think we're at a week and a half. So we will see. SARS-2 disrupts splicing, translation, and protein trafficking to suppress host defenses. Despite the urgent need, we still do not fully understand the molecular basis of SARS-2 pathogenesis. Here, we comprehensively define the interactions between SARS-2 proteins and human RNAs. NSP16 binds to the mRNA recognition domains of the UI and U2 splicing RNAs and acts to suppress global mRNA splicing upon SARS-2 infection. NSP1 binds to 18S ribosomal RNA in the mRNA entry channel of the ribosome and leads to global inhibition of mRNA translation upon infection. Finally, NSP8 and NSP9 bind to the 7SO RNA in the signal recognition particle and interfere with protein trafficking to the cell membrane upon infection. Disruption of each of these essential cellular functions acts to suppress the interferon response to viral infection. Our results uncover a multi-pronged strategy. Yeah, so that is quite the word salad. I would encourage you just to read the study. But that's more for academics, and I'm not an academic, so I can barely understand that. But so now we're gonna be at 10:14. As winter approaches, Europe and the United States confront alarming spikes in virus cases. So we're at the 19th. So let's see. U.S. New cases are trending upward in 39 American states, pushing the country's case curve to its highest level since August. Those states include much of the Northeast, which is starting to backslide after months of progress, the Midwest and Mountain West, where uncontrolled outbreaks have strained hospitals. Hospital beds are filling with virus patients, especially in the northern plains states, according to data compiled by the COVID Tracking Project. Even as testing remains insufficient. Oh, 1 second. All right, so even as testing remains insufficient in much of the in much of the country, 16 states each added more new cases in the 7-day period ending Monday than they had in any other week-long stretch of the pandemic. North Dakota and South Dakota are reporting more new cases per person than any state has previously. I'm not sure if I've heard more about those two states lately, though. And in Wisconsin, Wisconsin, we'll get to Wisconsin. And in Wisconsin, home to 10 of the country's 20 metro areas. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I forgot about that, actually. With the highest rates of recent cases, crews are preparing to a field hospital at the state fairgrounds. Wisconsinites across our state are struggling, and they are rightfully scared of the virus, Governor Tony Evers said to legislative leaders this week. As winter approaches, Europe and the United States confront alarming spikes in virus cases. Part 2. The EU. At the same time, Spain, France, and in the UK have all added more cases per capita than the US over the last 7 days, ending Tuesday, according to a New York Times database. There is also growing concern about the damage a second virus wave could sow in the formerly communist countries of Central Europe, many of which have weak healthcare systems facing critical shortages of doctors and nurses and inadequate testing programs. And in Russia, which reported its largest daily increase in infections on Wednesday, President Vladimir V. Putin sought refuge from the torrent of bad news by announcing that the Russian government had approved a second vaccine. The spikes come as the officials scramble to institute targeted restrictions on business, schools, and travel, and to avoid the blanket lockdowns that paralyzed economic activity in the spring. but it may be too late to avoid them, President Emmanuel Macron of France announced on Wednesday that starting on Saturday, the authorities would impose a curfew between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. in the Paris region and in the areas around 8 other major cities for at least 4 weeks. The measure is a part of a renewed state of emergency, which allows the national government to restrict public gatherings and movement countrywide. It had been declared for the first time in the spring, but ended in July. Next story. Give me a second. Gotta fix something. All right, where are we? President Trump is past the point of infectiousness and does not pose a safety risk to others, according to Dr. Anthony S. Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease expert, who has reviewed data from Mr. Trump's SARS-2 test. Now, I didn't post it here, but I did hear today that Trump went off on him, saying that he's a disaster and that he's tired of him talking about the virus. So, you know, combined with the fact that Trump is more than 10 days out from the onset of symptoms, Dr. Fauci said in an interview Wednesday, "We feel confident that we can say with a high degree of confidence that he is not transmissible." Nuchin says he does not expect a stimulus bill before the election. Now, a lot of people in the U.S. now are begging for another stimulus check. People are hurting, the poor are hurting, and the government is just lollygagging, playing around, playing games, and people are losing their homes, can't afford food, going homeless. A shame, despite being such a quote-unquote rich country. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said on Wednesday that he did not expect an economic relief package to be enacted before the November 3rd election, as he and Speaker Nancy Pelosi of California have continued to struggle to reach an agreement on a broad package to support the economy. Negotiators on Wednesday resumed discussions over a coronavirus relief package, even though Democrats and Republicans remain wildly divided over the scope and size of another stimulus bill. Speaking of oh, sorry, somebody passed away. Speaking of a Milken Institute conference on Wednesday, Mr. Munich said that his conversation with Ms. Pelosi was comprehensive and indicated that important differences remain. He said that it was unlikely that a deal could be reached and enacted before the election. Now, today is the 19th? I think they're still lollygagging and playing games. At this point, getting something done before the election and executing on that would be difficult, Mr. Mnuchin said. Ms. Pelosi and Mr. Mnuchin spoke on Wednesday for about an hour, discussing the language of the administration's latest $1.8 trillion framework, as compared to House Democrats' $2.2 trillion stimulus plan, which Ms. Pelosi pushed through the House earlier this month. They agreed to speak again on Thursday, and it went nowhere. As New York State continues to fight the apparent resurgence of SARS-2 in several hotspots, Governor Andrew M. Cuomo on Wednesday threatened to withhold state funds from local governments that do not successfully enforce shutdowns on schools and restrictions on gathering. Mr. Cuomo specifically mentioned New York City and Orange and Rockland counties in the northern suburbs, including the towns of Ramapo and Spring Valley, all of which have areas with the highest positivity rates of the state. Mr. Cuomo said he was frustrated by reports of continued gathering in those areas, including at schools and houses of worship, despite restrictions imposed by the state last week. Hopefully, that will motivate them, the governor said of local governments. The governor did not provide details on what sources of funding would be withheld, or how much money would be denied to local governments. but said the state could impound all funds. Mr. Cuomo also said that the state would withhold funds from both public and private schools that had already violated state orders. The state has seen a sustained increase in hospitalizations over the last 10 days. Northern Ireland will lock down for 4 weeks as England begins new restrictions. Northern Ireland, with a population of about 1.8 million people, is reporting an average of nearly 900 new daily cases this week, compared with an average of just over 100 during the height of the first wave of the pandemic on mid-April, according to figures compiled by the Belfast Telegraph. In response, it will close schools 2 weeks and pubs and restaurants for a full month, takeout and delivery excluded. These changes will begin rolling out on Friday. Retail shops will be allowed to remain open. Arlene Foster, Northern Ireland's Prime Minister, announced the new measures in the original legislature known as Stormont, noting a very worrying increase in the number of new SARS-2 cases. While localized restrictions have been in place for some time, cases have continued to surge. This is deeply troubling, and more steps are urgently needed, Ms. Foster said. Of the region's nearly 22,000 total recorded cases, more than a quarter have occurred in the past 7 days. Liverpool, meanwhile, entered the very high alert level on Wednesday under England's new 3-tier system. Restrictions included a ban on meeting those from different households indoors and the closure of pubs and bars. As bars closed at 10 p.m. on Tuesday, videos posted online show crowds of mostly young people packed together, embracing and dancing in the streets, even as area hospitals are embracing for a new wave of SARS-2 admissions. It's incredible. That is incredible. As politicians governing Madrid could continue to fight against a federal state of emergency imposed last Friday on Spain's capital region, a second wave of the virus is spreading faster than other parts of the country. In the northern region of Catalonia, the authorities approved new restrictions, including a 15-day closure of all bars and restaurants, except for takeaway food. Shops must limit their occupancy rate at 30%. We are in an extremely complicated situation, the acting regional leader of Catalonia, Pere Aragonés, said on Twitter. The number of cases in Catalonia has risen about 40% in the past week. In Navarra, whose regional capital is Pamplona, which has seen in recent days superseded Madrid as the region with the highest official infection rate, new restrictions came into force on Tuesday that included closing playgrounds and outdoor sports areas, as well as forcing restaurants to close at 9 p.m. Oh, my throat. Give me a second. There's people screaming outside. What? Yeah, so Spain is getting hit hard. I know the last last weekend they I think they had 38,000 cases over the weekend, so it's just getting bad. Dozens of new infections in Ontario originated from a single gym. Now I've been meaning to get back to the gym, but it's just at the way things are going, it's not very likely. An outbreak of infections in Hamilton, Ontario has been linked to a single spin studio, that Canadian officials said. Health officials have linked 44 cases directly to the studio, including 42 patrons and 2 staff members. According to data on the city's website, but efforts to trace the contacts of all those infected are continuing, and officials have already identified at least 17 more people infected through secondary household spread, according to the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. The event has caused the biggest spike in new cases in Hamilton since May, according to the city's SARS-2 statistics. This outbreak follows others associated with cycling classes elsewhere in Canada, including one in Calgary in July, in which more than 40 participants contracted the virus at a cycling club, where staff from several local gyms had gathered to work out together. Health officials said the event renews questions about the safety of group workout classes, in which participants are breathing heavily in enclosed spaces for extended periods, and instructors often coach vocally throughout. Doug Ford, Ontario's premier, moved to shut down gyms elsewhere in the province last week, including in major urban areas such as Toronto and Ottawa, after concerning spikes in cases. Indiana Health Commissioner Dr. Christina Box, her daughter and her infant grandson have tested positive for SARS-2. The governor also extended the state's mask mandate, set to expire last Saturday, to November 14th. Wow. He also extended stage 5 of the Back on Track reopening plan. Alabama coach Nick Saban and athletic director Greg Byrne test positive for SARS-2, the school announced on Wednesday afternoon. Both Saban and Byrne are now self-isolating at home. Concert promoters involved in a charity event featuring the Chainsmokers have been fined $20,000 for violating SARS-2 safety regulations in New York. Governor Andrew Cuomo announced Wednesday. However, the governor's office said the promoters did not inform officials of a friends and family area that did not require guests to wear masks. The event drew 2,150 concertgoers, which was over the allowed maximum, the office said, citing an investigation from the state's Department of Health. First Lady Son Barron Trump had SARS-2 but no symptoms. Japanese computer shows the humidity affects spread of SARS-2. I'll let you guys read that one because it wasn't that important. Face masks and coverings are not 100% effective at preventing the spread of SARS-2, according to a September study from the CDC. Now, why? They're not wearing them right. They're consistently taking them off. Chinese making masks that don't work, based upon other studies. Carelessness, ignorance, SARS-2 fatigue, which is one of the biggest threats we're facing right now, and various other ways SARS-2 can easily spread. I am 100% immune with a mask crowd is also part of the problem. The German government announced the new measures as daily infections passed 5,000, the highest since April. Rules on wearing face masks and on how many people can meet have been tightened. Germany on Wednesday announced tougher new restrictions on public life as it enters a decisive stage in its efforts to combat a surge in SARS-2 infections. The federal and state governments have agreed on considerable restrictions on contact between citizens in view of the increasing number of SARS-2 cases. Measures, which include limits on the number of people at private gatherings and a curfew for bars and restaurants in areas deemed hotspots, were agreed following an 8-hour meeting between German Chancellor Angela Merkel and the country's 16 state premiers. I am convinced that what we do now will be decisive for how we come through this pandemic, Merkel said. We are already in the phase of exponential growth. The daily numbers show that, she added. We must call especially on young people to do without a few parties now in order to have a good life tomorrow or the day after, she said. Now again, a reminder, how is this thing spreading so fast? Because people are having parties and they're having family get-togethers. Those are some of the top reasons why, we're in this situation, all of us. France became the latest European country to toughen its SARS-2 measures, declaring a public health state of emergency and imposing a curfew on Paris and 8 other cities. The French President Emmanuel Macron announced night restrictions for some 20 million people across Paris, Rouen, Lau, Saint-Étienne, Lyon, Grenoble, Montpellier, Marseille, and Toulouse. The curfew will be in place between 9 p.m. and 6 p.m. from Saturday and will remain in force for at least 4 weeks. Anyone violating curfew will be fined €135. Measures also come into force across the Netherlands, including restrictions on alcohol sales and new mask requirements. Tough measures are to be introduced in Portugal from Thursday as the country reported a new record in cases. Gatherings will be limited to 5 people. Weddings and baptisms can be attended by a maximum of 50, but university parties will be banned. Fines for businesses which do not comply with the rules will be doubled from an upper limit of 5,000 to 10,000 euros. The Premier Minister Antonio Costa will also submit a proposal for Parliament to make face masks compulsory in crowded outdoor spaces and use of the government's tracing app Stay Away COVID compulsory for some workforces. Iran's next. Give me a second. All right, let's get comfy. I've been making very long videos lately. So let me get comfortable. So Iran at breaking point as it fights third wave of SARS-2. Iran, the crucible of SARS-2 in the Middle East, smashed 2-gram records this week, reporting its largest number of deaths in a single 24 hours since the outbreak started in March, and the largest number of new infections. Sweet 16 super spreader party in New York leads to 37 SARS-2 cases, $12,000 fine. More than 3,000 cases can be traced back to the birthday bash at the Miller Place Inn on Long Island in Suffolk County, officials said. Italy on Wednesday reported 7,332 new positive SARS-2 tests, breaking its previous record for most infections added in a single day. Brigham Young University, Idaho, has warned that students could face suspension if they intentionally try to contract SARS-2. The university launched an investigation following reports of students potentially contracting the virus so they could sell their plasma containing SARS-2 antibodies. If the investigation confirms that students are actively going to contract the virus in order to sell their plasma, such students could be suspended and potentially dismissed. Officials fear Halloween could become super spreader horror show as LA County SARS-2 infections rise. The last spike in SARS-2 cases in California came during the summer holidays, beginning with Memorial Day as people got back to old routines after months in lockdown. Officials are hoping not to repeat the surge with the winter holidays. Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti on Wednesday asked residents to be creative in their Halloween celebrations to avoid trick-or-treating. The Beverly Hills City Council went a step further than the state guidelines Tuesday, prohibiting both house-to-house trick-or-treating and car-based trunk-or-treating on October 31st. More broadly, residents will be barred from giving out candy or other holiday treats to anyone outside their immediate household. Scofflaws could be cited if they violate the restrictions, according to the city. As more businesses have reopened in LA County over the last 2 weeks, an increase in infections has been connected largely to worksite outbreaks of 3 or more cases, FER said Wednesday. There were 39 reported worksite outbreaks in the county from September 20th through October 4th, a 70% jump from the 23 outbreaks reported in previous. Chris Christie says he was in ICU for 7 days, battling SARS-2, urges Americans to wear masks. The longtime Trump ally said he's now recovered from his illness, and thanked his doctors and the manufacturers of remdesivir. Really? and the Eli Lilly monoclonal antibody cocktail for giving me access to their extraordinary treatments. I am confident that all these factors contributed to my good health today. Well, the man is severely obese. I don't know about good health. The U.S. has passed 8 million mark for known infections. As SARS-2 cases across the United States climbed toward a third peak, the country surpassed a total of 8 million total known cases on Thursday afternoon, according to a New York Times database. Epidemiologists warned of a new worrisome phase, as 17 states are seeing surges unlike anything they experienced early in the pandemic. That's what I was talking about earlier. States including Alaska, Minnesota, Montana, and Wisconsin reported more new cases during the 7-day stretch that ended on Wednesday than any other week since the virus arrived in the country. Reports of new cases are trending upward in 41 states over the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks is still a meme. While 9 states are holding case numbers roughly steady, no state in the country is seeing a sustained decline. No state. Many of the 17 states seeing more new cases than ever, located mostly in the Midwest or in the Mountain West, had relatively few cases recently, but cases are now steadily climbing. ICU unit beds in hospitals are few and far between in some rural communities, experts said, raising concerns about crowded facilities. What's happening in the upper Midwest is just a harbinger of things to come in the rest of the country, said Michael Osterholm, an infectious disease expert at the University of Minnesota. High levels of infection in colleges and universities, Dr. Osterholm said, are serving as one source of the spread. Transmission has also been prevalent at events such as funerals, family barbecues, and birthday parties, he said, adding that the comeback of sporting events and dining has also added to the spread of this fall. Pandemic fatigue has clearly set in for large segments of the population, he said. This is not even an uptick. This is a major surge of cases that is happening. He added, it's only going to get worse. We have to be prepared for that. Now, unfortunately, I do have too much left. I think I'm going to stop here. Okay, I'll try to continue tomorrow. But yeah, I have like another hour and a half of content. And I need to go to sleep. I had a family over. Lost like 2 hours. I could have spent making the video longer. But it's 10:20. I'm going to be up by 4. So I'm going to go to sleep. And I'll try my best to see you guys tomorrow. Alright, take care because it's getting worse. It's going to be a dark winter, like I said.